Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch podcast. Your stool is ready. Jim Garrity is still away on work-related duties. And in his place, John Gabriel, editor-in-chief at Ricochet.com. He's also the host of the King of Stuff podcast. And it's also extremely important to point out that he is the undisputed King of Stuff. If anybody else claims that they're the King of Stuff, they're wrong, but nobody is because it's undisputed. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis today. Two of them still deal with what we talked about yesterday with the leak and the draft opinion potentially coming on abortion here. But John, kind of a double-fisted good martini here today, which we're always happy to have. Some days it's really hard to find any good news, but this one is actually good in a number of ways. Right now, Politico reporting that the day after Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, Democratic donors poured more than $30 million into Democratic campaigns and groups through Act Blue. Now, of course, that meant there was a Supreme Court vacancy and there were midterm elections coming up. And so the circumstances were a little bit different. But now, just $9 million being given to Act Blue in the 23 hours following this news from Politico. That the court was poised to overturn Roe v. Wade. And so Politico also quoting Julie Roginski. She used to be on Fox News quite a bit. I don't know if she still is or not. But she's quoted as saying, midterm voters care about affordability first and foremost, and they are not people who are worried every single day about losing access to abortion. And then in big bold letters, my fear continues to be that sometimes we as Democrats run on things that we wish the voters cared about rather than what the voters do care about. And I think she's onto something there, although she's probably not happy about the fact that she's right about this, John. But a Fox News poll out in perfect timing, 44% think abortion should be legal in all or most cases. 27% think all, 17% think most, while a majority of 54% thinks it should be illegal all the time or most of the time. All being 11% and most of the time being 43%. MSNBC even had polling out as this news was breaking on Monday that while Americans do by a close but considerable margin approve of abortion in the first trimester, they're very much against it in the second and overwhelmingly against it in the third. So this whole idea that the Democrats and the media are out there pushing these days about how the vast, vast majority of Americans are appalled by what the court might be poised to do here just isn't true.
Yeah, I really don't think it's going to be any kind of a major have a major effect for the Democrats in the midterms, because we saw this several years ago with Miss Tennis Shoes herself, Wendy Davis, running for governor in the great state of Texas, and they tried to almost, shut down the state. It looked rather insurrection-y, let's say, when they went into their state capital, and she performed worse than most Democratic governor candidates there. So I think pinning their hopes on this being a huge game changer is foolish, especially when people realize that if you're a voter in California or New York State, it will not affect you at all, this decision. And are they really going to rush to the ramparts to defend the personal health decision, let's politely call it, of people in Idaho? I don't see them doing that. Most of the states where it's going to be at least somewhat restricted, these are red states. And I think what New Yorkers care about is New York, and what Californians care about is California. They think they're in the vanguard, and I doubt they're going to change their voting behavior. The people who are single issue voters, they already vote for Democrats. They're already extremely active. They already show up election after election, but not that many people are.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that way. I do want to get your reaction. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, John. Eric Erickson, who's a radio host and pretty active on social media, he's telling everybody to just calm down. He says not that much is going to change because states already, like you were saying, and we mentioned yesterday, are going to, set their own abortion laws if, in fact, this is the ruling. He says most of them essentially have already done that. We saw these fights over in red states, heartbeat bills, 15-week bans, whatever it is. And then in the deep blue states, was a couple of years ago now, that New York was lighting up the Empire State Building pink because they're allowing abortion all the way up to birth. And now you've got Maryland and California even considering allowing neglect deaths after babies are born following failed abortions. And so is he right? Or is that a simplistic way of looking at what might be coming here?
Yeah, these states, the way Democrats are going, they are going now for the fourth trimester abortion with neglect. Yeah, Eric is completely right with this. This should be a state issue. That is the entire point of striking down Roe. Is it should be these decisions should be made closer to home. And the people who are striking down Roe, for the most part, they're crazy radicals like me who are just abhor the idea of abortion. But constitutionally speaking, it's like, look, this is not mentioned in the Constitution. It should be decided by the states like it was before. Roe only poisoned the well. It made politics worse. It made jurisprudence worse. And we kind of have to go back to brass tacks with this and decide this on a state-by-state basis. And that's the chance for people to change the hearts and minds of people if they want to get more people on their side. If they're in a more hostile state towards what we agree with. But Eric is completely right. I really don't see this having a big impact on the midterms because people, they are filling up their cars with gas, and that's what they care about. And they are going to the grocery store and wondering why it's more expensive every weekend. So that is what people are voting for. Democrats are lying to themselves, and they think it's going to be something else.
Yeah, I think on the margin, it might help get their base turned out in certain races, especially competitive races around the country. So that could potentially be a factor. But as we have said for quite a while now on this podcast, the big issues are going to be economy, especially inflation, schools, and crime. And no matter what you think about abortion, those are things you're facing every single day if those issues are happening in your community. And certainly schools and inflation are happening everywhere. And crime seems to be on the rise in a lot of places too. Yeah.
And I think another thing, if I can add that, the reaction by Democrats, when you start having people screeching and screaming in streets, there were some violent actions, as they call them now, in Los Angeles about this. When people see protesters come out radically pro-abortion, these are not pro-choice people, they're radically pro-abortion people screaming in other people's faces, that's going to turn off voters. And I think that's what happened repeatedly in Texas when they've tried to push this issue. People, even if they are pro-choice marginally, they don't want to hear a lot about it. It's just considered a distasteful subject. And if you have Elizabeth Warren screeching into microphones down the street from you, you're just going to want to turn that down and vote Democrats out, I would think.
Yeah, that was quite the performance yesterday outside the Supreme Court by Elizabeth Warren. Oh yeah, well, she got her 15 seconds on the news, I guess, but which was, I think, the whole point of that. But all right, let's talk about our first sponsor of the day, and it's Masterworks. Have you heard about America 3.0? Well, imagine a scenario where the economy doesn't skew at the top and where hardworking Americans have a real shot at a financially secure future. Now, America 3.0 isn't some socialist utopia idea. It's just about returning the country to the land of opportunity, and opportunities are all around us if you know where to look. In fact, there's one great investment opportunity that goes back 245 years, right to the time when America was just being built. It's a value-preserving asset class that's now valued at up to $1 trillion, and that asset is contemporary art. I know it's surprising to hear that contemporary art, like a Picasso painting, can be an investment, but in 2014, the Times reported that it's now firmly planted alongside equities, bonds, commodities, and real estate as an asset class. And then in 2020, they called it one of the hottest markets on earth. So to learn more, go to masterworks.io/martini and see important Regulation A disclosures at masterworks.io/CD. But once again, for more information, masterworks.io/martini. All right, John, let's move to our bad martini now. And one of the things we've learned over the past couple of years is that maybe trusting the CDC to get everything right is not the best idea. They've been all over the map on lockdowns and masks, and seems whenever the teachers union calls, they change their position on whether it's okay for students to be together and that sort of thing. But now we're learning that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention were tracking us. Yeah, they were tracking us through our cell phones to make sure we were obeying their edicts on lockdowns. Daily Mail. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention paid for location data harvested from millions of cell phones to track compliance with COVID-19 lockdown measures. The CDC paid $420,000 for a year of access to the cell phone location data from the data brokerage SafeGraph, according to documents reported by Vice News on Tuesday. The data was aggregated, meaning that it was intended to show general trends rather than the movements of specific phones. However, the moves still set off alarm bells with some privacy advocates. So, John, given what we learn in dribs and drabs from the government, the idea that, they're not following specific people, they're just looking at the overall picture, is supposed to somehow calm us down. I think either way, it's super creepy.
Yeah, it really is. And just that they would have the ability to this means they could shift to focusing on private people pretty much anytime they wanted, if they're working with the SafeGraph people especially. This is why, if we had mentioned this as a possibility even 6 months ago, you would be shouted down as conspiracy theorists, disinfo, misinfo, all that rigmarole before they would finally admit it. I think once more, we're just seeing this very intrusive security state focusing on people, wanting to control what people do. We've seen this revealed in Canada repeatedly. And instead of being horrified, people in Washington, D.C. seem to be taking notes on these things. A lot of the people running our government want us to turn into the social credit score state like China has. And Americans, thankfully, at least at this time, just aren't going to stand for it. Anytime the government trends in this direction to track people, to reward them for compliance with their orders, we just need to shout and holler and shout this down so it doesn't get even worse, because the government really loves that idea of being able to control behavior. But that's not what America is about. That's not what freedom is about. And we can't stand even for slight moves in this direction. If we look at this and say, well, it was just aggregate data and they just care for our safety and health, then they're going to push further and further next time. They have the technology to do it, and we just can't allow them to get close.
No, absolutely not. And you and I have talked about their move on personal movement when it comes to wanting to get us on public transportation and making it harder to get a car, and then taxing mileage. The idea is that they can control movement, and we don't want anything to do with that. But every time one of these, privacy breaches gets brought up, whether it's the NSA a few years ago during the Obama years or some other time, it's always, first of all, never them that reveals it. Hey, we were doing this. We just wanted you to know, but we weren't looking at anything individual. It's only when they get caught by some decent reporting that they have to admit it. And then they do the, oh, no, don't worry, we would never, ever do that sort of thing. But I think that rings hollow, don't you?
Yeah, it totally rings hollow. We know not to trust these people. We've seen the just sheer incompetence in so many ways. But also, the CDC especially, they have just been trying to micromanage people's reaction to COVID with all these various prevention measures. You have Anthony Fauci repeatedly admitting that he's saying, well, 3 feet distance, keep your 6 feet distance. We're just kind of guessing at this. He's kind of guessing at what percentage need to be vaccinated before we reach herd immunity. And he has said he's doing this to kind of gauge and then control American behavior. We are adults here. We can make our own decisions. That is the purpose of the United States. That's why we were founded. And it's not up for the government to allow citizens to do A, B, or C. It's what we citizens allow the government to do. And as it stands now, we're allowing them to do far too much.
Oh, perfectly said. Yes, that's exactly the way it's supposed to be. And unfortunately, way too many people are okay with the government telling us what to do. John, I know on a personal level, this was not an issue for you. If anyone follows John on Twitter, you know how he loves to find remote cabins on islands in the middle of oceans. So I don't think quarantining and hunkering down during those first few months of the pandemic was much of a challenge for you.
Yeah, I spend far too much time watching off the grid cabin videos on YouTube and furiously taking notes for, I got to set up a bug out kit and get ready. I already got the beard, so I'm ready for a life in pure isolation, but not.
Can you make your coffee without electricity? That's the big question.
Oh, yeah. I have means that I've used for camping in the past, so I am set up. supplying good coffee might be a little tricky up there in the mountains.
You'll just have to grow it, I guess.
Right.
Somewhere. Juan Valdez pulled that off back in the day. I remember that. He always seemed to be up in the mountains picking coffee beans in those commercials. So.
Exactly.
All right. Well, as you fret about what the government might be monitoring, and probably is, let's be honest, on your phone and elsewhere, try to rest easy as much as you can. And for that, there are great products from MyPillow. And right now, they've got their buy one, get one extravaganza going. So you can buy one and get one free, which is the concept there, at good prices. MyPillow bed sheets as low as $59.98. The MyPillows as low as $49.98, and the new Roll and Go Anywhere MyPillows starting at $29.98. And again, it's buy one, get one. So on these Roll and Go Anywhere MyPillows, you can use it on your couch, your recliner, in your car. It's versatile enough to take with you on vacation or anywhere you go. It comes in multiple patterns and colors. It's machine washable and dryable, and it has a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's a buy one, get one extravaganza at mypillow.com/martini. Bed sheets and MyPillows are just the tip of the iceberg. Find the full list of BOGO offers by visiting mypillow.com/martini or call 800-874-0104. Stock up with buy one, get one free savings today and get Mike's book free with any purchase. mypillow.com/martini or call 800-874-0104. mypillow.com/martini. All right, John, on to the crazy martini now. And whenever we talk about the Lincoln Project on here, we have to start with a big sigh. And it's not just the Lincoln Project, but they're the most egregious example of this. But we see it from a lot of these people who claim to be conservatives, then went hardcore never Trump, and then somehow they weren't just opposed to Trump, they were opposed to almost every policy position they ever embraced prior to Trump, which is just the biggest head scratcher on the planet. People who were super in favor of moving the embassy to Jerusalem in Israel. All of a sudden, that was a bad idea when Trump did it. On and on and on. There was no intellectual consistency. All of a sudden, tax cuts, for heaven's sake, were a bad idea, depending on who was proposing it. Well, now it's this likely decision coming down from the Supreme Court where these folks who told us they were on the right forever are now having major, major problems with this. And so a bunch of different examples of this. First of all, Brett Stevens used to be at the Wall Street Journal. Now he's at the New York Times. Token righty, and I put that in quotes over there, says it shouldn't be hard to imagine how Americans will react to the court conspicuously providing aid and comfort to the 19%. I assume that's related to some poll. You may reason, justices, that by joining Justice Alito's opinion, you will merely be changing the terms on which abortion issues get decided in the United States. In reality, you'll be lighting another cultural fire, one that took decades to get under control. Really? Under control? In a country already ablaze over racial issues, school curriculums, criminal justice, election laws, sundry conspiracy theories, and so on. Lincoln Project itself, of course, getting in on this. They say that this draft decision, if it is the final decision, will be another in a series of roll back the clock efforts by right-wing extremists. These guys were making campaign ads on this issue for guys less than a decade ago. Every Supreme Court justice testified that Roe v. Wade was settled law. Apparently, that was not true. This decision will take America back to a dark period when states will have the power to impose the power of the state over even survivors and victims of rape and incest. The Alito decision should be seen in the context of a broad authoritarian movement that has become the majority of the Republican Party. And rounding things off, Evan McMullen, who in the very first words of this statement says, as a pro-life Utahn, I'm concerned that the never-ending tug of war over abortion laws threatens to create a public health crisis and further divide the nation without solving anything. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, some states will immediately enact extreme laws, such as total bans on abortion. This is the pro-life guy, remember. Onerous limits on birth control and criminalization of women in desperate situations. I oppose these laws. John, it kind of reminds me of the Princess Bride line there, where they keep using that word, pro-life. I don't think it means what they think it means.
Yeah. And to quote something I've heard Jim quote several times, all I can think of is Denny Green. They are exactly who we thought they were.
Right.
This is exactly what we're seeing is the people who kind of have shunted social issues, social conservatives off to the side with an embarrassed, nodding of the head and let's move them over to the kids' table. Now, finally, progress is being made and they're outraged about it. We are just seeing this repeatedly. Brett Stevens saying, oh, we finally got the fires about abortion under control. When did we do that? My entire life, they've been raging and only getting worse my entire life. I'm glad it's him and he agrees with Manhattan Literati's views on these things, but that's not where the rest of the country is. As far as the Lincoln Project, I know Steve Schmidt was on Twitter yesterday, banging his drum about what a brave defender of women he is and how, boy, I am going to fight for abortion rights. He is the guy who stage managed Alito during the Alito confirmation. And apparently he's changed a little bit. So if anyone is responsible for this decision, it's him. It's Steve Schmidt. But the checks are still clearing from the left that they get, and they want to make some money. He wants intergenerational wealth, and by gosh, he's going to get it. So we're just seeing these people reveal their true colors. We had Bill Kristol do the same thing. Jonathan Last doing the same thing. It's really disheartening to make you look back at their previous work, much of which was quite good, especially writing, and just wonder if they ever believed in anything. Because as you say, once Trump supported these things, they have decided those are kind of too icky to support, and we're not going to do that anymore. We need more people who fight for their beliefs, even those beliefs I disagree with, because at least then we can have an honest debate rather than online posturing.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. But, when you watch politics long enough, it shouldn't come as a huge surprise. And we've had 6 years of this now from the Lincoln Project. So,
right.
But Sam Alito was in the dissent as an appellate court judge on Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Where did you think he was going to come down on this
right. Issue? Exactly. Yeah, it's such an outrage that he is doing exactly what he has always done in his judicial career.
Yeah, you wonder how long the grift is going to work for those guys in particular, but can't come soon enough, the end of that. But John, always great to have you with us. Thanks for filling in today, and we'll catch you down the road. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. Great to be on.
Thank you, sir. John Gabriel, editor-in-chief at ricochet.com, and he is the undisputed King of Stuff, host of the King of Stuff podcast, also, of course, at ricochet.com. Jim Garrity will be back later in the week. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thank you so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell a friend about us as well. Thank you so much for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow all of us on Twitter. John is at EXJON. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Wednesday, and please join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.
This week on the Federalist Radio Hour. Although I also think it's interesting that this experiment has kind of played out over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. And if anything, it gives us more evidence that our culture of free speech was not a weakness. In fact, the alternative creates a much weaker culture, at least relative to the past. But this is exactly, I think, why I am not fundamentally optimistic about Musk. And again, we have all of these reasons that this is good and that this is bad, and I think it is certainly better than the alternative. There's no question about it. I'm Emily Jashinsky of The Federalist. Subscribe to The Federalist on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.